Jai.
So welcome everyone. We've got AJ Sullivan just jumping in.
AJ.
Chapu. We got Matthew Sava. We got Troy, the Bhakti Jedi. Matt Godden. Dr. Matthew. Matthew's been to this house actually.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Cool.
I have been.
Yes. And so here we got Dr. Jason.
Hi, bro.
We got Veda. We got Bali, Shakshi Gopal, Jorgito. Hey, we had a special surprise that we thought was going to happen. Our man crush was on his way, and we were fangirling all the way. Raghu was about to stop at the house right at this time, but Raghunath Capo, he was going to come right here, but he had a flat. He was in Tennessee, driving from New York to California.
Take me to
And
we're
we're gonna feed the whole wife and not wife and kids, but the two kids and Bhakti Justin. My wife made some cheesecakes, and but Krishna had other plans, and it didn't include me. So he's got something better to do. How's the audio? Because my laptop's volume is kind of quiet. Can you all hear me good? All right. I was debating whether to do it on my phone or the laptop. Laptop's got a jinkier camera, but more. So this class, we just wanted to cover basically introduction to the process of memorization. Why a whole chapter? Why not just some important verses? Like, why we going so nuts and deciding to memorize a whole dang chapter of the Bhagavad Gītā? And what are some of the things that we're going to do to enable us to do that? So have any of you ever memorized verses before? Raise your hand. Anybody here? Got one, two. George got 3 words.
I know.
Lilavati, Veda, you got a verse? Got to be. Lilavati's got some from like 30 years ago. Any of you guys? Anybody here? Anybody ever tried it out? Have you tried and like were not successful, or you haven't tried it yet?
I have 15:1 memorized.
15:1. All right. Was that for this class?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Hey.
Nice. He's ahead of everybody. Sweet. So one of the things that I found is that if you start memorizing verses, at some point the pace starts to slow down. You think, okay, I see Kashtuba, he's got all this stuff in his head. You know, Raghu, he's got all this stuff stored away. And as Krishna says in chapter 17, I think it's text 15, it says, Anudvegam karam bhakyam satyam prihitam chayat swadaya abhyasanam chaiva vanmayar tapu uchate. That the austerity of speech is speaking things that are anudvegam, not agitating to others. Anudvegam karam bhakyam satyam, truthful. Prihitam, very kind, very dear. Hitam, very beneficial. And swadayaya means, and referring to sacred literature. When you're speaking about spiritual topics, you should have some reference point outside of the box of our brain. So there are basically 3 things in that verse. There's sensitive and sensible. Like if somebody is about to, walk off a cliff, you don't say, excuse me, I don't want to hurt your feelings. You scream the hell like, hey, stupid, look. You're not very sensitive, in certain situations. Like the guru is not always sensitive. He may give you something that you might shake the boat a little bit. And then sensible, but we're not always sensible. It's kind of a balance. You don't go up to somebody and say, actually, I think you're really ugly. I'm just speaking truthfully. You're not, I really don't like the way your nose looks. And, that's this maybe a sensible or it may be truthful, but is it beneficial? Is it not agitating? Is it Priya? Is it dear? So there's a sensible and sensitive. And then the other element was, and specifically for spiritual matters, we should swadaya. We should refer to all these sacred literatures. That's why sometimes Raghu tells a story and Kashtuba would say, where is that from? We want to have some authenticity for our speech, especially when we're speaking on.
That's my question. Where is what you were just talking about? Where is that from?
Which part? The austerity of speech, chapter 17, text 15.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thanks.
So one of the things that I noticed that happen is that a person may start their practice, maybe learn one verse, learn two, learn three, and then eventually they realize whatever I learned, I forgot. And so forget about learning four. Forget about learning any more because I learned it and then I forgot it. So what's the point? And generally, you're not going to retain anything that you don't use. And for most people to have 20, 30, 40, 50 Sanskrit verses, we won't have a use for them on a day-to-day basis in our practical speech unless we are very, very smart and can connect all the dots. We might not have a situation that we have, or unless we're like a priest in the temple, we might not have a situation. Oh, Andrew Armar is stuck in the waiting room. Sorry, wait, how do I get him over here? Okay, sorry. All right, let's get him over. Sorry, Andrew, sorry. And Dana Kay, welcome. We spoke maybe about 8 minutes. The beginning part's recorded, so you can catch up whatever you missed. We're just talking about the process of why to memorize verses. What are some of the benefits, and what are some of the hurdles that people go through? So, can you guys hear me? Dana K, Chapu's there from Ecuador. We got folks from all over, so welcome.
Haribol, Chandra.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
And we got a bunch of folks here in the house too. We just had a really fun kirtan. Sankirtan. So this point is any fool can sing a song, but it may take a genius to put all these verses together, to use them on a regular basis. Okay, we got Irene. Welcome. Irene, welcome. Welcome. I'm not going to even try to mess up the last name. And wait, we got another person coming in. Bailey. All right. Okay, got a lot of folks here. So anyone that missed the first part, we're going to try to record every single session so you can catch up. So when I became a monk in 1999, I started my process of learning verses and memorizing verses because that's what a lot of monks did. But as I said, eventually a lot of people lose this pace. You kind of lose steam because you put in the work and then you forget it. And then I was walking downtown and I saw these 15-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids, 13-year-old kids on stage doing a performance. And they were reciting from memory chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gītā. And I was like, my God, I'm a monk. And here's these kids, they're probably not even so into it. They're just parents forced them to do it. And they're reciting, fluently from memory, very nicely, chapter 15. And I just realized, come on, if they can do it, I can do it. Come on, what's the big deal? And working at it, I quickly learned that it becomes a natural flow. They all flow together. So chapter 15, I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the book Bhagavad Gītā in acronyms. There was no homework yet, but you got to look at. Did any of you look at chapter 15 yet? Chapter 15. So you remember the acronym for chapter 15 is HOME, home. So you guys want me to recite chapter 15 in like 2.5 minutes? Would you like to see a demonstration of that? 2 minutes? 2 minutes? You want me to do it in 2 minutes? All right. All right. Should I do that? Just to show you? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And one thing I practice is, especially when there's verses that have visual things. What is the word you said earlier today? Tactile.
Haptic.
Haptic. Haptic. There's Jason Starkey. Make it haptic. You act it out. Charades. So urdhvam moolam is upward roots, downward branches. So I'll go for it. This is chapter 15. There's an invocation phrase that can be said before and the end of each chapter. So the invocation for chapter 15 is Ata Panchadasho Jaya. Now we'll start chapter 15. Urdhvamalam. Okay, who's got the timer? George has got the timer. You're gonna time me? All right. I'm not saying it's gonna. I'm probably gonna. If I try to do it fast, it's gonna be bad. All right. Urdhvamalamadashakam ashatam prahuravyayam chanasi yasya parnani yastam veda saveda vit adashchurdvam prashitashta shashaka guna pravida vishaya plavaha adashchumulani nasantatani karmanubandini manushaloke narupamasya tatopalavyate nanto nachadina chasampatishta ashwatamena sarudhamulam sangashashchena jidena chitva tataparam tatparimargitavyam yasmin gatanani vartande bhuyaha tameva chadyam purusham pravadye tapaviti pashita parani Nirmana mohajita sangadosha adyatna nitya vidivitta kama dvandir vimukta sukha dukkha samgya gachantamura paramavyam tat natad vasayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yatgatpani nivartante tadhama paramam mama memevam sho jivaloke jiva bhuta shanatana manashashtanji andriyani prakatishthani karshati shariram yarvapnoti yachchapi kamitishvara gihitvaitani samyati vair gandana vashayat shrotam chakshushpashram cha rasam grahanam evacha Adishchaya manashchayan vishayan upasevate utkramantam stitam vapi bunjanam vagananvitan vimurananu pashyanti ganachakshusha yatanto yoginashchayanam pashantyatma vashyatam yatanto kritatmano nainam pashanti chetasa yaraditya gatam tejo jagat vasayate kilam yachchandramasi yachchagno tattejo vidimamakam kamma vishyatu bhutani darahamaham ojasha pushname choshiri sarva samabhatva rasatmaka Aham Vaishnavanuro Budva Praninam Deham Ashrita Pranapana Samayukta Pachanam Chaturvidam Sarvaschachaham Hridi Shanivashto Matasmiti Ganam Pohanam Cha Vedeshta Sarveraham Veyo Vedantakit Veda Vedevachaham Dvaima Purusho Lokek Sharikshare Evachak Sharasarva Bhutani Kutak Shara Uchate Utama Purushashtranya Paramatmeti Dahrita Yolakachaima Visha Vivarta Abhi Ishvara Yasmat Sharamatito Ham Aksharat Abhichodatma Atosmi Loka Vede Chaprahita Purushotama Yomameva Samodo Janati Purushotama Sarva Vidvajate Mam Sarva Vena Bharata Itigayatamam Sastram Idam Mukva Mayanaga Etat Bhutpa Budmachat Krita Kritascha Bharata Om Tatsariti Srimad Bhagavad Gītā Supana Sastru Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Sastre Shikashajuna Sambade Purushottama Yoga Panchadasya Jaya. That's like the ending phrase that you don't have to chant, but that can be done as well. So how many songs do you guys know? You guys probably know so many songs. For example, I shared a little meme with my daughter and Jason today. The song was stuck in my head all day. Shake, 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 Sonora.
Shake your body. Yeah.
So I saw this meme. It had Snape, and it had a menorah. Professor Snape, and then it said, and then a salt shaker, shake it, Bobby Lime. It had like a guy named Bobby from some cartoon and a lime, and then it shake, menorah, and then it had the Snape, they had the It clown,
from
and then the Aldi grocery, Aldi time, and then a piece of like the spiced thyme, and that's been in my head all day long. And the Beetlejuice scene from the movie. So many songs we have stuck in our head. So that's kind of the theme of why memorizing a chapter can work in a way that's a lot easier than memorizing individual important verses. So of course it's good to memorize individual important verses, but you may get further. You may get a lot more memorized and a lot of stuff to work with and keep with you by doing chapters. Just a little summary of this chapter. So verses 1 through 6 is this world is not your home. This world is not your home. And there's a kind of quite elaborate analogy that's given there of the banyan tree with its roots going upwards and branches going downwards, kind of like you see a reflection of a tree on the bank of a lake or a river. O stands for over and over and on again. So that's verses 7 and 6 can be either for either or, but I like to use 6 for H because it's describing the spiritual world as in contrast to this home, the spiritual home. So 7 through 11 is all about reincarnation. So that's O for over and over and on again. Those are some very nice verses to speak on reincarnation. Actually, for all of you who want to discuss the fundamental elements of bhakti, the real basics that are most important for people to know, this chapter is very useful. Even before reincarnation, there's some sense of like, no, this is not really our home. There's something more. It's got to be something more than just like money and power. And then it leads into the concept of the topic of reincarnation. So H, O, and then M is there's God, maintainer, sunlight, moonlight, fire, the power within fire, the power within your digestion, the power within your brain to function. He says, I'm supplying all this stuff. I even supply the Vedas for your spiritual edification. So body, mind, and soul. Maintainer, body, mind, soul. That's M. And then last verses 16 through 20 is the essence of the Gita. Like the previous verse, there's a God, he maintains everything. And then the last part is, it's not you. So he describes how there are two kinds of souls in existence. There's a liberated, there's the condition. Liberated live in the spiritual world, conditioned live in this world. And then he says, but then there's a third one, the Superman, the Purushottama. He's on a completely different level. And those who understand this fully engage in loving service. So that's a very short summary of that the whole chapter right there. A lot of very important verses, important points that can be used in so many different ways. And as you see, that was 2 minutes. That's how, if you become, you're doing it for some time, you can wrap it off quickly. But, 5 minutes. So many of us have 5-minute songs memorized. We can't even forget the words. And there's work we do in the beginning. There's this, the work that we do it's kind of like we don't want to be just a jack of all trades. Like there's a puddle, which is very thin, but it's spread apart. And there's the well. It's very deep, but it's in one spot. And it goes down very deep. So that's what we're going to try to do in chapter 15, is we're going to go down really deep. We're going to say, we're just going to say, I don't know anything about the other chapters, but I know this one. I know this one. I know this one really well. And, at least compared to the other chapters. I'm not saying I know it compared to other people, but at least my knowledge compared to the other chapters, this one I know I put some time in. And you see, in the Sanskrit, there's so much that can be, let me just make sure I didn't, because I remember last time there was somebody who said they were waiting in the waiting room, because I'm not usually doing this stuff. All right, I think we got everybody nobody's waiting. So when we do this, we'll find that each verse, like we said, there's those sections, they logically lead into the next verse. So it gives us this natural flow. It's a flow of a song. It's a flow of intelligence, intention. It's just they make sense together. And when you learn individual verses, you can't really just wrap them off together because they don't necessarily all connect together in that same logical way. And so that's one of the reasons why that I suggest one whole chapter and I kind of push 15 as a start because it's one of the shorter chapters. Some of the things that will make memorization easy is or a project like this easy. Take a little bite out. Take something that's not as difficult. Say like chapter 2 is like 78 verses or something. That's I'm still not ready to do that one, and I'm not sure if I would even be able to practically apply all those verses. Where chapter 15, I can almost any verse I can relate to any kind of spiritual dialogue. So something easy, and then that leads you, like the next one you might want to do is chapter 9. Chapter 9, the verses in chapter 9 are used so commonly in lectures by saints and sadhus that many of the verses you hear a lot. Like you probably heard, if one offers a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, that's a verse in chapter 9. Or the saints are satatam kirtayantamam, they're always chanting. Or mahatmanastamam bharta, the great souls are taking shelter of Krishna. There's apichit sudaracharo, even if a person is badly behaved, but he is my devotee, I consider him a saint, because it's like a dirty person in the shower. You can't really call him dirty. Chapter 9, it's longer, but so many of the verses are so they're heard so often that it also helps you. Another thing that makes verses easy to remember is when the verses themselves are, now, like I said, this day is just an introduction, so we're not doing any work, but next time it's going to be a lot more interactive. I just got a pro account, so we can make like a, what do you call, breakout rooms, so we can kind of test each other. One of the goals that you want to achieve is you want to get a good understanding of like 50% of the words, maybe even more of the Sanskrit words, not the grammar, just the basic meaning of the words. And say this Saturday, we're going to work on verse 1. And we're going to work on memorizing it. I'll give you some, I sent some books out, but I can also just, paste an email and just put all the text there. It's probably about 10 minutes of reading that you have to do before Saturday. That's it. 10 minutes of reading that you have to do. Prabhupada's purport. You could also add in some lectures there. Listen to any lecture you can find on that verse to dig and dig and dig. And even, it doesn't matter if you remember all the points, but when you memorize something, it becomes kind of like an index for your mind. That Sanskrit word will start bringing little different connections, little strings to things that you've heard. As long as you have the verse in your head, those other things will start connecting. And another thing to do is ask somebody, hey, I'm working on this Bhagavad Gītā thing. I'm trying to memorize a verse. Call up somebody, your grandma. I don't know if she want to hear it, but call up somebody and tell them the verse. Say, can I wrap this off to you? Like it's like you're just trying to learn how to say it. It's going to be hard, but you just tell somebody it and see what you can tell. What you remember of the translation of the purport. I don't necessarily recommend rote memorization of the English. Rather, learn the Sanskrit, and with that, remember the translation in your own words. That will be a lot, you'll get a lot more out of that than just saying it rote in a rote fashion. You find when Srila Prabhupada gave lectures, he would take a verse and just take it apart. And he'd say, this word means, and many times when we're speaking on the verse, he wouldn't say it, translate it in the same English way. Because say you have a verse in English, how much can you dissect of it? But the verse in Sanskrit, you can write a whole book on one verse. There's so much there in the words and how they connect. And you don't need to know all the grammar because all the saints have already put, they already dissected it for you. But when you just know that word, then you start making those connections, you start remembering those connections. So I'd like to ask you guys to share some reflections, some thoughts.
Can I?
Okay, we got Jason Starkey. He's ready. He's ready.
I'm just curious, because we're trying to learn how to say it. Like I myself was listening to you in awe and amazement because I cannot, I don't know how to say any of that stuff. And so, because my concern for myself is, what if I'm learning it incorrectly, like the way I say it incorrectly,
Well,
so,
in the email I sent, two recordings. One is like an old school Indian, Bhagavad Gītā chant. You can kind of hear it somewhat clearly. It's a little fast. And another one is the whole chapter. It's just one track. I think it's an hour long, and it has all the verses, all the purports, and it's Sanskrit and English. And I believe they chant quite clearly there. And if anybody just wants to call me and just ask if they need some help with one of the words. One of the points is if you have one of the other points that what makes verses easier to remember is when the structure of the verses are easy to understand, if you look at the word for word and you look at the translation and it's like, oh, as long as you knew the words, you knew the translation, even if you've never seen the translation, you kind of pieced it together. Verses like that are usually a lot easier for the brain to handle. And a lot of Bhagavad Gītā verses are written. The Bhagavad Gītā is not written in a very ultra sophisticated manner. If somebody studies Sanskrit, not myself, I haven't done it like that, but if somebody studies Sanskrit for some years, they will be able to, somebody just got to purchase a Sanskrit pronunciation class by Nityananda Das. He's like super perfect pronunciation. That's Nityananda in India. He's, I think.
I saw that.
Yeah, he's
Sanskrit sense?
Yeah. Raghu did that class too. And he was trying it, and it was, and then he went back to his old way of saying it. It's like they're like, no, just say it how you normally say it. When verses, when the structure of the language, how it's written, when it's simple, and it somehow makes it easier to memorize. Bhagavatam verses are written in a much more advanced form of Sanskrit, and therefore it's just sometimes Bhagavatam verses, even if they're in the same meter, they're just harder to remember. Or sometimes Upanishad verses, because they're kind of cryptic, and it makes it harder to understand how those words come out with this translation. Like Ishopanishad, if you saw the word for words, you wouldn't be able to figure out what it's talking about. You need somebody who actually understands the language to put it together. But like Tesham Satata Yuktanam, Tesham those, Satata always, Yuktanam engage, Bhajatam worship, Priti Purvakam with love, Dadami I give, Buddhi intelligence, Yena by which, Upayanti come, Te they. Only the last part, you just switch they come to me. The whole thing, just by knowing the meaning of the words, it just made sense. But like some of the harder, Sanskrit verses, sometimes those are a little bit more of a challenge to memorize. So some more reflections. Arumar, anybody? AJ Sullivan, Troy.
Nityananda Prabhu, I have a question. When you were saying about not directly using the English translation, what about between the Sanskrit and the English and the Bhagavad Gītā as it is, using that as that's back and forth?
Yeah, that's what you want to that's what you want to delve into. Actually, one time we had some young students recited chapter maybe 15 in front of Srila Prabhupada, And then he asks, okay, so what's the meaning? And they're like, they didn't know what it meant at all. So we don't want to like not know the meaning. We want to know the translation. And we're going to read the translation. You could read like there's like 3 different translations of Baladeva Vibhushan, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. You have Srila Prabhupada himself. You can, it's like a jewel. You're looking at it from a different angle and see what kind of color comes out with this different, with the light. But because they asked Prabhupada once, they asked Srila Prabhupada, what book would you like to translate next? And he said, maybe this book by the 6 Goswamis, this book. And then they said, but maybe Bhagavad Gītā. And they're like, Srila Prabhupada, you already translated Bhagavad Gītā. And he said, no, there are many commentaries. And so Prabhupada was considering, translating some of these works that were actually later translated by his disciple Bhanu Swami. So it's like a jewel. There's lots of, or even a mine. There's so much gems to be pulled out. Like I was speaking to, I think Bhakta Matthew, and I was saying, man, I had this question on chapter 15. I didn't realize I had the question. And then one day I was like, oh man, that is a question, because in one part it talks about you leave the body with your subtle body, and then it says you get a new eye, ear, sense of touch. But then it says mind. It's like, no, you leave your body with your mind. How are you getting another mind? I was like, wait, this is kind of confusing. And I looked into the Acharya's commentaries, and I didn't even have to go ask some big scholar. It was right there. It was already, the answer to that specific question was found. So yeah, try to improve our vocabulary, and you don't have to know all of it, but when you get to like verse 5, say we're on class number 6 and we're on verse 5. How well do you know verse 1? Verse 1, you got it locked down, because each day, each class, you're adding one more that you're going to recite. So every time you recite all 3, all 4, all 5. And this way, you're rusty on verse 5, but verse 6, verse 10, you got it locked down. Does that make sense? Okay, Bailey, any reflections?
I'm just glad to be here, Prabhu.
Oh, thank you. And it's, of course, it's not easy. It's not going to be so easy. Not everyone is going to. Some people may think, well, I can't memorize things, and it's true. Some people have easier ability, but it really is a muscle that we can stretch and flex, and we'll find that wherever we're at, there will be some steps of improvement if we make the endeavor. Dr. Matthew, yes.
I recommend, so what I've been doing is I downloaded a voice recorder app on my phone. I'll record myself and then listen to it over and over again.
There you go.
And then it helps, that really helps a lot, hearing your own voice instead of just someone else, it helps.
You can tune right into your own voice easily.
Yeah.
Nice. AJ Sullivan, any reflections?
No, I really like what you were saying. It's like singing, right? It's a song. Like, and we remember these songs, that we heard, every word to a song that we heard 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's the same idea, right? It's just, and if you think of it that way, it's probably a little more easy to digest. It's a 2-minute song versus a
chapter of a book.
A 20 verse chapter, a 15 verse chapter, so yeah, it's easier to think of it that way.
And the thing about it is, you could hopefully do it as some kind of employment of your daily practice, something that you say, oh, I walk, I take a walk every morning. So this is going to be my thing. Every time I take that 5-minute walk, I'm going to do, or a 10-minute walk, I'm going to chant this chapter. It can be, and it will come to a point that even if you were able to only chant it once a week, the cool thing is that if you did it only once a week, you would still have it. It wouldn't fade away. Whereas a lot of times other verses, you do the work and then you forget it. So that's the real cool thing about it, done all together in one full swoop. Irene, any reflection? Oh, back to Chris, got his hands up.
I don't have a reflection for group, but I just want to say thank you for
Thank
leading
you.
this course. Very
Yes.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And in the future, if any of you guys were are asked to say, like, to give a class on the Bhagavad Gītā on a Monday by AJ Sullivan.
Do it.
I've served as the temple minister for the Dallas temple for about 16 years. And so many times, I don't like to give classes if I don't prepare for them. I feel like I don't want to just regurgitate just whatever I've heard so many, whatever. I want to put some time and energy. If there's 100 people in the room, I should put at least an hour time. Not that, oh, let me just sit here. I don't, I feel like I should invest some time. But sometimes the person who was scheduled to give the main class on a Sunday evening, they're like an hour before, or oh, I can't come today. Can you give the class? And so these chapters, I have chapter 9, 15, 7, and half of 10 memorized. They were like my fallback plan. I'll just go back on those and just give a whole summary or speak on a certain section, and it was and for all audiences seem to appreciate it. They don't have to be Indians from India. They love it. But anybody was like, wow, you know what you're talking about. You got that weird language all memorized. You know what you're talking about. And you can talk about all the different words in that weird language, So it gives, some authenticity of whatever we're trying to present. And it's our own, can be our own meditation, our own something. And if you're in a prison, you got your book right there, locked in your brain. You got it with you at all times. And sometimes devotees that do this, in their dream, their spouses say, "Hey, man, you were saying verses in your sleep," or if you can't sleep, you just start thinking of those verses. So I did say it was going to be a half hour, an hour, 9 minutes over. Anything else anybody want to share? Yes, Chance.
Yeah. So first off, thank you for hosting this. It'll definitely be something to, again, also something to help keep your mind on during the day. Say, almost like a mantra, something holy to keep your mind on instead of just letting it wander.
So did you guys hear Raga was going to be here live for this class?
Should have.
I think I got too excited. I jinxed it. Something happened. I don't know. He got a flat tire. He was like in Tennessee. He called me up and said, "Hey, what's going on? I'm coming through Dallas." And we're like, "Great, man. My wife, we'll make you a cheesecake, and we'll cook for you. Jason's gonna make a juice because you guys are fasting, and I'll cook something for your kids, and it'll be fun. You guys just come in, pop in, eat something, get on your." But he got a flat tire. It set him like 4 hours back, and they have a wedding that they have to make, in California, that they can't be late for a wedding. And so we'll probably see him on the way back. Hope that would be really cool if he cameos on another class time. We'll see what time he comes back through Dallas. He asked me can you freeze the cheesecake? Hold it for us. But yeah, it was going to be a surprise. We're going to have Raghu live here in Dallas with us, and it's our man crush. But anything else? So
I did just want to
yes,
say to help Jason out, perhaps, at least the edition that I have of the Bhagavad Gītā, this one, it does have in the back, it does have a Sanskrit pronunciation guide, and I also have a copy of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which also has one, and they're both really helpful. I find that, like, I've been using them and kind of practicing it whenever I'm reading the verses, doing reading by myself, and then when I hear someone else say the verses, it seems to be like I think I'm getting most of it right.
nice.
So it is pretty helpful, and it's always just like, it's very small, so it's kind of easy to digest and easy to remember for the most part.
One key point to remember is English speakers often overemphasize the second syllable. So if we can avoid that tendency, on certain words we all know, like we'll say radhika, but if anybody who doesn't know, they'll say radhika, which does not sound as sweet as radhika. Or say putana, Yashoda. Everything we say will overemphasize a second syllable, unless there's an extended vowel over. Then that's just how American language is, how English language is.
That's Sean Murphy. I was gonna say Sean Murphy told me my Sanskrit sounds like Italian.
Italian.
So every time he's talking Sanskrit, it sounds like you're just speaking bad Italian.
So that's one thing to be conscious of, that we overemphasize the second syllable. And what can be kind of slow and monotonous and trying to just say all these things, over time, those slow and tedious practices will become more natural, and we'll be able to read all sorts of any kind of Sanskrit word with a good pronunciation. And pretty much every verse is in what's that meter? I forget. Anushtup. It's basically just like the Hare Krishna mantra. It's 32 syllables. Each line is 8 syllables long. Any other questions? So we'll start on chapter with verse 1 next Saturday, and I'll give you some materials. We can all read some a little bit beforehand, and then we can do breakout rooms, and we can test each other on words, hear each other, how we pronounce it, how we say it. And then we could, one thing I did for verse 1 and 2, I could send you, I said, verse 1 and 2, see if you can write the verse out in emoji. Just using emojis, write the whole verse out. Now you can't go much further than 1 and 2, because 1 and 2 has it's all visual things. Then it gets philosophical. Then you're running out of steam. But yeah, verse 1 and 2 you can write in emojis, because urdhva, mula is roots, ada down, shakam branches. We would act this out. Ashwatam is a tree, prahur it is said, avyayam eternal. Chandamsi, the hymns. I don't know, I'll put some emoji for hymns, some speaker, I don't know. Yasya parnani are the leaves. Yastvam Veda, the one who knows this, sa Vedavit, he knows the Vedas. That's the first verse. And another point about the first 5 verses, don't get too hung up on the difficult analogy that is given in the first 3 or 4 verses. And the meter also gets a little bit longer. This is the hardest part of the chapter, is this first 5 verses. Verse 2 through 5 are a longer meter, and it's more obscure. Like I said, obscure verses are a little bit harder to deal with. So most of the time, when I even do a presentation on the chapter, I kind of gloss over that part, because there's so many different little points that are hidden in the purports that are not really even in the verse itself. It's hard to put your whole mind on it, because it's a big thing, this whole banyan tree upside down. And just kind of take the overall basic point from it, and that way you won't feel so overwhelmed And you're like, oh man, I just forget it. I can't do it. So I think, yeah, I don't want to keep you all too long. Anything else? Or we'll meet on, it's 10:30 a.m. my time, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday.
I
Okay.
don't think that's right.
What?
I don't think that's right.
Saturday, 11:30.
We're an hour.
Oh, I said
we're-
7:30. Did I say 7:30?
Yeah, we're an hour ahead of you.
Okay,
Yeah.
11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday. We'll meet, and then we'll again meet on Wednesday, and we might have some new faces on Saturday that couldn't make it on Wednesday. And yeah, well, thank you.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hare Krishna.